Good morning, combo players, and welcome to the Eternal Chaos YouTube channel, where we focus and feature gameplay from the most degenerate and unfair decks in Magic the Gathering history. Today we have a special treat for you all. We actually have an in-person vintage replay that took place this past weekend at our local game shop, Gamers Bazaar in Farmington, Missouri. So I myself will be playing Combo Dredge on the left, and my good friend Mark Easter will be playing Jewel on the right, which is an artifact-based combo strategy if you're not familiar. And I would say these decks have a pretty fair matchup against one another. One might describe this matchup as two ships passing in the night, where both decks are just trying to combo and don't really care what the other one is doing. So that's about it. I'll go ahead and cue the music and we can get into the mood for some vintage gameplay. All right, so we lead off here with Bazaar of Baghdad, drawing 2. Let's see what we decide to discard. All right, looks like we have Stinkweed Imp, Poxwalkers, and I think that's a Shambling Shell there at the bottom. So we pass the turn to Mark. Mark leads off with Mishra's Workshop into a Grim Monolith. So Mark currently has access to 4 colorless mana, and he seems to be using it to play the One Ring. Mark activates the One Ring, putting a burden counter on it to draw a card. You can see an island in Mark's hand, and it looks like he's passing the turn. So in our upkeep, we activate Bazaar of Baghdad, dredging Stinkweed Imp. That will allow us to mill 5 cards from the top of our deck into our graveyard. We're looking for cards like Narcomoeba, Dread Return, which we hit both of, and Cabal Therapy. So that was a very, very good mill. And then we'll go ahead and dredge Shambling Shell for 3, hitting yet another Narcomoeba, as well as a Bridge from Below. So that was a very powerful Dredge 8. And here we're deciding what to discard. So that'll be Hogak and our 2 dredgers. The Narcomoeba's trigger, because they were milled into the graveyard, and so we get 2 1/1 flyers. Still in our upkeep, we'll pay 2 life to play Noxious Revival, targeting the Bazaar of Baghdad in our graveyard to put it on top of our library, and then we draw it for turn. Then we play it for our main phase, and that'll give us 2 additional dredges. So here we dredge another Stinkweed Imp. Hitting Bridge from Below. It's the only really notable card there. And then we'll dredge another 3 for Shambling Shell. In that pile we hit Gristlebrand, which is a key part of the Combo Dredge strategy, because if they can Dread Return Gristlebrand, then you can basically dredge the rest of your deck. You just have to be careful not to kill yourself by drawing more cards than you have in deck, and then you just Dread Return Thassa's Oracle for game. So here we're going Cabal Therapy, sacking a Narcomoeba, targeting ourselves because Mark has protection from everything due to One Ring right now. That'll trigger Poxwalkers, since we cast a spell from somewhere besides our hand, in this case the graveyard. So Poxwalkers is a 3/1 that'll come into play tapped. And it looks like we have 2 bridges, so sacking that Narcomoeba will give us 2 2/2 zombie tokens. So we seem to be in a commanding position, which is pretty standard game 1 for Dredge. And then game 2 and 3, when the hate comes in, then Dredge really has to grind just to pick up 1 more game there to finish off the match. It's pretty common. Alright, so we sacrifice Poxwalkers, I think a Narcomoeba and a token to play Dread Return, targeting Gristlebrand, which will yet again trigger the Poxwalkers. That's a nice interaction. You can use Poxwalkers to play things like Dread Return, and then he'll get to come back immediately. And so here Mark is responding with Force of Will, stopping us from putting Gristlebrand into play and winning the game on the spot. So we had Poxwalkers and 5 tokens, so we'll sacrifice Poxwalkers and 2 of the tokens to play yet another Dread Return targeting Gristlebrand again. That's the thing about Dredge and Vintage, is there's so much redundancy that Force of Will is almost worthless. But it was certainly worth a try. Alright, so Gristlebrand's in play. Gristlebrand has been activated. So we pay 7 life, and then we draw 7 cards, but of course we're going to dredge most of those draws. So we dredged Stinkweed Imp, we're dredging another Stinkweed Imp. I don't see any other Stinkweed Imps in grave. Probably have to dredge a Thug. Yep, looks like we're dredging a Thug. So we hit another bridge from below. We hit our Thassa's Oracle, Narcomoeba. So dredging another Thug for 4. So we have 3 more draws off of Gristlebrand. We're counting our deck. We don't want to deck ourselves. Surprisingly easy to kill yourself when doing this play right here. So you want to try to count it and get exactsies if you can. But unfortunately, we're not hitting any great dredgers here. We only have 2 Stinkweed Imps, and we don't have our Thug. So we're just working with our smaller dredgers, and due to that, it's looking like we're not going to be able to make it to the bottom of our deck. So it looks like there's 7 cards left in deck, or maybe 6, I'm not sure. I don't know what dredgers we have left, maybe just a Shambling Shell for 3. So it looks like, yeah, we're doing Shell again, and I see the 2 Dread Returns have been exiled. Exiled. So one of them was Force of Will, and then the other one we used to get Gristlebrand into play. We only play 3, and I don't see the other one in grave, so we really needed to hit that Dread Return there, but it looks like we're out of dredges off of Gristlebrand, and apparently that our 3rd and final Dread Return is in the bottom 3 cards of our deck, so that's kind of unfortunate. Not a lot we can do about that. So there's going to be no way to win this turn. Mark's definitely going to get another turn. So if Mark can try to cobble together a whole bunch of draws using Jewel or Paradoxical Outcome to dig into his deck and then get to Time Vault, get infinite turns, then he could win on his turn. Mark's hand's protected due to the 1 ring. So here we're just trying to make an imposing board. That way we for sure have lethal on the next turn. Either via attacking, if Mark doesn't have the One Ring, another One Ring, or we can do something like draw the top card and then draw the other two using Bazaar, and then discard the remaining Dread Return to Grave to put Thassa's Oracle into play and win the game. So Mark has to win right here. Let's see what he has. Oh, he doesn't have anything. So he concedes there. So game one goes to Dredge. That was pretty convincing showing. I mean, double Bazaar of Baghdad for Combo Dredge is pretty broken. Noxious Revival makes it a lot easier to get to it. Consistently get to like your second Bazaar of Baghdad, because you can just dredge a whole bunch of cards and then during your upkeep go ahead and put one of the Bazaars that you dredged on top of your deck and then just draw it. Also, all of the Serum Powders make it to where you're more consistently getting, of course, to a single Bazaar of Baghdad, but that also means you're more consistently getting the two Bazaar of Bagdads as well. So getting the double Bazaar is not as uncommon as you might think, just based on how this deck functions. So here, Dredge took a regular mulligan, not a powder mulligan. But we see a Bazaar of Baghdad on top, so that's a keep. And Mark leads off with Mishra's Workshop, so access to 3 mana. And then follows it up with 2 Power of 9, Black Lotus, and Mox Emerald. Alright, Mark has access to 7 mana. Let's see what he has here. This is also post-side, so we could have, he could have some sort of hate for Dredge. So here we're seeing Soul Guide Lantern, which he can tap and sacrifice it at any point to exile Dredge's graveyard. So that's basically a time walk for Dredge, which is really nice for Mark because he's playing a combo deck that can pretty consistently win on turn 2, but certainly turn 3. And having a time walk versus your opponent in that situation, playing that sort of a strategy is very powerful. So Mark's in a commanding position right here. In order to get the game back, Dredge would need something like, I don't know, Force of Vigor to blow up like the Jewel plus the Lantern to kind of get the tempo back in their favor, and then probably also have a Grief to deal with whatever's in Mark's hand. That's going to be follow-up. Because even if you deal with the Lantern, like Mark's playing a combo deck and he's going to be a turn ahead, and Dredge at least takes 2 turns to really go off. It can't go off in 1 turn. But we didn't see a Force of Vigor on Mark's end phase, so that means that Dredge doesn't have Force of Vigor. So here they're going to have to answer Soul Guide Lantern, likely by just filling up their graveyard and baiting Mark into exiling cards. But that means Mark is going to get another turn for sure, but probably 2 more turns pretty comfortably. So what do we stick in the yard here? Decisions. It looks like we bin a Poxwalker, an Icarid, and a Shambling Shell. So we have Icarid for next turn, and we have a Dredger as well. Not a great Dredger, but you know, we're just trying to get Mark to exile our graveyard, so that kind of makes sense. And then we follow up with a Chalice of the Void, which is pretty effective versus Mark. You know, if he tries to go for a Paradoxical Outcome loop or something like that, then Chalice is going to be pretty effective in that spot. So here Mark goes Ancient Tomb. So he definitely has no deficit of mana at the moment. Currently working with 9 mana and 3 blue, which blue mana can kind of be a choke point for the Jewel deck, so the 3 blue is pretty significant. It lets him play Paradoxical Outcome, Time Walk, Ancestral Recall, all the blue spells, or Tinker. There you go, that's another one. So here Mark is floating 2 blue, and I imagine he'll sack the Emerald. So he'll probably tap that first and then go ahead and sack it. So now he has 1 blue and 1 green floating. He's going Tinker. So what does he go for here? You go for more hate. You go for a combo piece. What is Mark playing here? If he wants to try to win in 1 turn, yep. He goes for a Mystic Forge, so he's going to try to close out the game right now. So Mystic Forge will allow him to play colorless spells from the top of his library. And he can always look at the top. He can also tap Mystic Forge to exile the top card if he doesn't like it. So what's that card on top? I think it's a Mana Vault, so that's going to go into play. It looks like we're recounting how much mana he has floating at the moment. Yep, so he's using the green, I would presume, to play Mana Vault. So he has access to, I think, 8 mana here. Looking at the top card, looks like a blue card, so can't play that. Just reminding him of Chalice. It's the one little constellation prize that I have. It's my Chalice. It's keeping him from playing 0 drops. I mean, he can still play him if he just wants to try to get through the top of his deck, but they're not going to do a lot. So here he taps Mishra's Workshop for 3 mana, and then uses, I guess, 1 blue floating and that for the 1 ring. So he has 1 blue still floating, adds a burden counter to the 1 ring and draws a card. It looks like he just drew Ancestral Recall out of all cards. Jeez Louise. Mark opened up Broken, and he's drawing Broken too. So no mana floating. He's got a full grip of cards. Looks like he has a Force of Will on top. So he can try to keep pushing here. Probably makes sense to just go ahead and, yeah, exile that Force of Will. See if he gets anything better. If he does, maybe he can keep going, but if not, again, he has a Soul Guide Lantern, so he can basically turn skip me at the beginning of my turn when I try to start dredging. And then it's hard to believe that I get another turn if I have to pass it back to him again without any interrupts or anything. Okay, so he's continuing to push. So he has 3 mana. He has 2 mana floating. He played a Manifold Key, so he can start untapping things like the Manifold Key, the Mana Vault, or 1 ring if he wants to draw. Just depends if he needs more mana or wants more cards. Okay, looks like he's untapping the 1 ring, so now he has 1 colorless floating. He's gonna draw 2. Oh, and I think that's a Time Vault on top. So all Mark needs is 1 more turn. And that's it. So yeah. At this point, Dredge would need some sort of Hail Mary. Like, Mark would have to, like, go unconscious, have like a brain aneurysm and start spazzing on the table, and then I can just go and go full combo before he comes to and uses Soul Guide Lantern. Like, that's the only way can probably win at this point. But Mark's just seeing if there's any other actions he can make before passing over the turn. And there's not. He go ahead. He passes the turn back to me. And we'll certainly try. I mean, in this point, I don't know that he has Time Vault on top. So we'll give it a go. In our upkeep, we trigger Icarid. In response, we activate Bazaar, Dredging Shambling Shell for 3. We hit Narcomoeba, which will trigger. We don't have another Dredger, so we're going to draw. We do hit a Bridge from Below. Deciding what we want to bin. Yeah, ideally we want to leave a Dredger in our hand. That way, once Mark hits us with Lantern, we'll have some follow-up. So it looks like we bin like a Shell, a Serum Powder, and a Narcomoeba. And so our triggers are getting ready to resolve. Let's see if Mark decides to activate his Soul Guide Lantern. He does. So there goes our whole yard. There goes our Narcomoeba and Icarid trigger. Draw for turn. Yeah, and we see the Time Vault in Mark's hand. Not a lot I can do here. I mean, Mark's just considering, does he play it out here, or is it possible I have like a Force of Will or something? I mean, this version of Dredge, Combo Dredge, doesn't really have the space to play Force of Will and Force of Negation. So he can kind of just play out the Time Vault. There's no real punish. Yep, that's it. Mark shows me the Time Vault and I scoop it up. All right, going on to game 3. Mark leaves me hanging here. That's depressing. And all right, Dredge is going first. We lead off with Bazaar of Baghdad. Draw 2. Let's see what we decide to discard. We haven't seen any griefs yet this match. Certainly would be nice to draw one at some point. We have a hollow one this turn though, so that's a 4/4. It looked like we binned the Cabal Therapy, Bridge from Below, and Shambling Shell. So we have a Dredger. We have Cabal Therapy, which can kind of help to allow us to build up creatures to then go for a Dread return by like sacking, and then you get like multiple creatures off Bridge, and then you sack those multiple creatures for Dread return. Like that's sort of a play pattern. So Dredge is doing quite well here. Let's see what Mark has. I mean, he has double Mox, and Mox Sapphire is always strong. So he leads off here with Manifold Key, which is interesting. Does he have Time Vault? So he's getting confused, it looks like. Which is okay. Mark's newer to this deck, so that's okay. Yeah. Like this sort of play pattern would indicate to me that he has a Time Vault, but I would think if he just has 2 mana plus a Manifold Key, he would go Time Vault first, pass turn, and then hope to just be able to get infinite turns on the next turn using Key. I don't really have a way of interacting with... Well, I mean, I guess Force of Vigor could kill it, which could be a concern. So here, like, just putting the Key on board is less committal because he has other artifacts that untap his Time Vault as well. So here we're milling. The backwards card is Force of Vigor. I have those in the mail, unfortunately, so we had to proxy here. But this mill is really good. We're hitting double Narcomoeba. Yeah. Double Narcomoeba is perfect here. So now we just need some bridges. We have one bridge. Well, I guess all we really need at this point is like what? Dread Return and Gristlebrand. And we have enough to go for it here. And I see a Gristlebrand, so we just need a Dread Return. Do we hit it? So now we're dredging our draw. But I don't see Gristlebrand. Oh, but we we had the second Bizarre Baghdad in hand. I forgot about that. Pretty good. So we just need a Dread Return. Oh, and there it is. So we'll be able to sack 3 guys, or double Narcomoeba and the hollow one, and then put Gristlebrand in play. The only thing we have to worry about potentially is Force of Will from Mark. So we want to be careful about that. So I see at least 2 bridges in grave. Yeah, we hit a lot of stuff there. Yeah, thankfully Mark didn't have any graveyard hate, or this would have been going quite a bit differently. And Mark didn't have a 1 ring this time, for once. So here we can go Cabal Therapy, targeting him, and calling Force of Will. Which it looks like Mark is kind of considering what to do, so he probably does have a Force of Will. Yeah, and that'll get us Poxwalkers back, and then 2 tokens off of the bridge from below. Mark's still thinking here about what to do. Yep, and it looks like he has, yeah, Force of Will. He had 2 jewels in hand, some other stuff. So, yeah, that was kind of a questionable keep from Mark. He didn't really have the mana to sustain those jewels. So, yeah. But that happens. You live and you learn. You know, he won't make that mistake next time. So here we get Poxwalkers back. We get Gristlebrand back. And now, the only way we really lose at this point is if we deck ourselves and then run out of dredgers in the graveyard and have to draw using Gristlebrand. Like, say we dredge like 5 or 6, and we dredge our whole deck, and then we accidentally draw the last one. We don't have a deck. Like, that's how you lose in these spots. So you just have to be careful about that. Make sure you very carefully count your deck and how many dredgers. And the idea is to get Exactsies if you can. If you can dredge the exact amount of cards that you have in your deck, then obviously that's the ideal outcome. Yeah, and it looks like we're finding better dredgers than we did in game 1, so it should be quite a bit easier. I think we have 7 cards left in deck, so what, like a Thug plus Shell should be the rest of the deck, which is exactly how many more draws we have left off of Gristlebrand. So yeah, I think just Shell, and then our whole deck is a grave. Yep. So we hit multiple Narcomoebas. Our graveyard's a bit of a mess. Probably could organize it a bit better, but it's kind of semantics at this point. We know Mark doesn't have any interruptions, so we can just sack and go Thassa's Oracle for game. And that's it. GG's. Combo Dredge beats Vintage Jewel. Well, thanks so much for watching, guys. We're definitely going to be making more vintage content in the future. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely stay tuned. We're going to be building some more decks. So thanks so much. Appreciate it, and have a good one.